Chapter 6. In Frankfurt.
Is it time yet, Fräulein Rottenmeier?
Asked the thin little girl for the second time. The housekeeper did not raise her eyes from her embroidery.
Be patient, Miss Clara,
she said. Clara's mother had died many years before, and Herr Sesemann, Clara's father, was often away on business, so the housekeeper, Fräulein Rottenmeier, was in charge of everything in the Sesemann household. She had a solemn expression and wore a short cape over her shoulders and a large cap perched on her head.
They will be here soon,
she said decidedly. Just then the doorbell rang, and a rather sour-faced maid announced that there were visitors. Fräulein Rottenmeier rose slowly from her chair as Heidi and her Aunt Diet entered the room.
So this is the child,
Fräulein Rottenmeier said in an unfriendly voice as she examined the newcomer.
That is a disgraceful hat she is wearing. What is your name, child?
Heidi.
What? How odd. That cannot be your real name. What name were you given at birth?
I don't know,
replied the girl.
What an answer,
the housekeeper exclaimed.
Diet, is she foolish or pert?
If you please, Fräulein,
Diet said, as she curtsied to the housekeeper.
She was named after my sister, Adelheid.
Well, Adelheid is a name that can at least be pronounced. How old is she?
10 years old,
Diet replied.
My grandfather says that I am 8,
Heidi insisted.
Only 8 years old?
The housekeeper exclaimed.
Clara is 12. I informed you, Diet, that Clara's companion must be of her own age. What books have you studied, child?
None,
Heidi answered.
What? How did you ever learn to read?
I have never learned.
Good gracious! You cannot read? Diet, this is not part of the agreement. How could you bring me this creature?
If you remember, Fräulein,
Diet said calmly,
you asked for an unspoiled child. This one fills the bill exactly. Now, if you'll excuse me, my mistress is expecting me.
Diet curtsied again and was out the door before the other woman could respond.
Wait!
Fräulein Rottenmeier called angrily, and she rushed after her. Heidi stood where her aunt had left her and began to examine the room. Until now, Clara had watched in silence. Now she beckoned to Heidi and said,
Come here.
Heidi turned at the sound of the soft voice and saw a girl with gentle eyes sitting in a wheelchair by a small table.
Shall I call you Heidi or Adelheid?
The girl asked.
My name is Heidi.
Then I shall call you that. My name is Clara. Did you want to come to Frankfurt?
No.
Heidi responded.
Tomorrow I am going back home again to bring the grandmother some white rolls.
You are a strange child,
Clara exclaimed.
Don't you know that they have brought you here to keep me company?
Fräulein Rottenmeier came bustling back into the room.
That tiresome Diet was gone before I could get downstairs. We shall have to make the best of it.
She clapped her hands sharply and called,
Tinette? Sebastian?
The double doors at the back of the room swung open.
Tinette, make a room ready for the young miss.
The maid threw a disdainful look at Heidi, then flounced off. The housekeeper next addressed Sebastian, the butler.
We shall have dinner now. Take Miss Clara in.
Heidi could not take her eyes off Sebastian. She placed herself in front of him and announced,
You look just like Peter, the goat herd.
The housekeeper clasped her hands in horror.
Don't ever address servants in that familiar way. Clearly, I shall have to teach you manners.
Sebastian placed Clara at the table. The housekeeper sat next to Clara and beckoned Heidi to take the place opposite. Next to Heidi's plate was a fine white roll. When Sebastian offered her fish from a large tray, she pointed to the roll and said,
Can I have that?
Sebastian nodded. In a twinkling, Heidi slipped it into her apron pocket. Sebastian made a face to keep from laughing. He remained standing silently by Heidi, for he did not dare to speak or to move away until he was bidden.
Shall I eat some of that?
The girl asked, pointing to the fish. Sebastian nodded again.
Then give me some.
Shocked at Heidi's brash manners, Fraulein Rottenmeier quickly reprimanded the child. Sebastian tried to hide his amusement, but in doing so, the tray in his hand began to tremble.
You may go now, Sebastian.
The housekeeper ordered.
Put the tray down.
All through dinner, Fraulein Rottenmeier lectured Heidi on how she was to behave in a gentleman's house. But the little girl was so tired from her long journey, she scarcely heard a word. When Sebastian came to clear the plates, he found Heidi fast asleep in her chair. She didn't wake even when he carried her upstairs to the little corner room Tinette had prepared for her. When Heidi awoke the next morning, everything was strange to her. The high white bed, the washstand, the long curtain covering the closed window. Longing for fresh air, she tried but could not get the window to open. She dressed herself slowly and went downstairs to find Clara. Out in the hall, Fräulein Rottenmeier was speaking to the schoolmaster.
A word, Herr Kandidat,
She said.
We have a young visitor from the Swiss Alps. She will be a companion for Clara and will be treated as one of the family. I must warn you, however, that she does not even know her alphabet.
I do not mind teaching her the alphabet, Fräulein.
The tutor responded.
Good. But if the child holds Miss Clara back in any way, you must inform Herr Sessmann.
The tutor bowed politely. He had just turned to enter the library when he heard a loud crash. Fraulein Rottenmeier swept past him and flung open the door. A small table lay on its side. Books and papers were strewn everywhere, and they glimpsed Heidi running out the other door.
That wretched child! What has she done now?
Fraulein Rottenmeier cried.
It was an accident.
Clara gasped between gales of laughter.
She heard the carriages in the street and ran to look at them. You see how it is, Herr Kandidat? She has no idea of how to behave in polite society.
The housekeeper rejoined. She hurried downstairs to find Heidi standing in the open doorway looking puzzled.
I thought I heard the wind in the fir trees, but I can't see them anywhere.
Heidi told the housekeeper sadly.
Firs? Do you think we live in a forest? Come upstairs immediately and let us have no more of this wild running about. Do you understand, Adelheid?
Heidi sighed.
Yes, Fraulein.
By the time Sebastian had cleaned up the mess in the library, there was no time left for lessons. Because she was not well, Clara napped in the afternoons. Heidi was instructed to do as she liked, so long as she stayed out of mischief. Heidi sat herself down on the stairs and waited for Sebastian.
Excuse me?
She said when he appeared carrying a tray.
Yes?
He said crossly. Heidi hesitated, then asked,
How do you open the window?
Is that all?
Sebastian laughed, and leading the little girl into the dining room, he swung open one large window. With a joyful cry, Heidi ran to look outside.
But there is only the stony street.
She cried.
Where do you go to see the whole valley?
Sebastian scratched his head.
Well, I suppose you would have to go up in that church tower over there. The one with the golden dome.
Thank you, Sebastian.
Heidi said. Straight away, she ran down the stairs and out the front door. Questions. 1. Did the housekeeper greet Diet and Heidi in a friendly way when they met? 2. How old was Clara? 3. Was the maid glad to make a room ready for Heidi as she was ordered to do so? 4. Did Heidi behave well according to the housekeeper? 5. Why did Heidi scarcely hear a word from the housekeeper all through dinner? 6. Was the tutor willing to teach Heidi the alphabet? 7. Why did Heidi keep looking at Sebastian, the butler, when she met him for the first time? 8. What was Heidi instructed to do when Clara napped in the afternoon? 9. Where could Heidi see the whole valley according to the butler? 10. When will a person scratch his head?